Let's go now to Crystal Wells in Geneva. She's a spokesperson for the International Committee of the Red Cross. Good to have you back with us, Crystal. What's your reaction to Sudan's warring sides agreeing to extend the ceasefire? You must be relieved.
We would welcome, obviously, anything that gives civilians respite from violence. Civilians have obviously been through so much in Sudan. In the last 2 weeks, we've seen obviously very heavy fighting in densely populated areas, which often has a disproportionate impact on the civilian population in terms of injury, loss of life, and also damage to the infrastructure that they rely on for survival, like water, electricity, and hospitals. So any reprieve that civilians can get from fighting, we would very much welcome. But of course, we do approach this with cautious optimism as we've seen a number of ceasefires come together and then fighting resume once again.
Now, the UN's humanitarian chief, Martin Griffiths, says that even before the fighting erupted, about a third of Sudanese were dependent on some form of humanitarian assistance. That situation has now worsened over the 2 weeks of fighting. So what is the humanitarian need there right now, according to the work and the organisations that you're in touch with on the ground?
The needs in Sudan are really rising by the hour. As you point out, Sudan had a humanitarian crisis before this conflict erupted just over 2 weeks ago. This is a country that has faced decades of conflict violence and instability. I think of communities in Darfur where millions of people are displaced from their homes, sometimes because of violence, sometimes because of climate shocks, such as floods we saw last year. Many people are struggling already to be able to have the basic food, water, shelter, medical care. So this conflict comes on top of what was already a very fragile situation, and the needs are rising. Our priority now as the International Committee of the Red Cross is to be supporting hospitals and healthcare facilities, which have been under huge strain since the conflict started. Doctors and nurses have really been doing the impossible over the last 2 weeks, trying to care for patients with next to nothing. No electricity, no water, dwindling medical supplies. Hospitals would often need to be restocked every 2 to 3 days. And obviously, those supply chains have been broken down since all of this started. So, yesterday, our first shipment of 8 tons of medical supplies arrived into Port Sudan. This is very much welcome news on our part. It's a relief that they're in country, and it's now our priority to try and get those supplies to where they can be life-saving into the hands of doctors and nurses. But this will require the right security conditions on the ground to do so. As you can appreciate, this is a very volatile and dangerous situation, and we'll need the security guarantees from the parties to get them to where they can be used, where they're needed.
And we know that the international community, particularly the regional partners of Sudan, have been crucial in terms of getting the two sides to agree to these ceasefires. But what else can the international community do to help the people of Sudan caught up in the fighting?
There are two ways that the international community can help. There's been a lot of focus about international citizens being evacuated from Sudan. And of course, we're happy for anyone who is back home safe with their family. But we need the international community after those evacuations to stay engaged in Sudan. We need the international community to stay engaged in Sudan to help to find a political solution, to end this conflict, to end this bloodshed. But we also need them to stay engaged financially. This is one of the most underfunded, unsupported crises in the world. We have had years of underfunding for Sudan, and for us to be able to scale up in the degree that we need to, and for the humanitarian community to scale up to the degree that they need to, we will need the support from the international community to do so.
Okay, Crystal Wells from the ICRC, best of luck with your work in Sudan, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.